Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Astrology Today with Jeff Harmon. I am Jeff's assistant, Ella. Happy holidays to everyone. Jeff has a lot to talk about tonight, but before we jump into that, I just want to let you know about a few upcoming episodes we have planned. One is on the lunar mansions. Another is, of course, Jeff is going to be doing a 2023 forecast that's coming up pretty soon. And we are going to be doing an episode on the power of ancient gemstones. And I am super excited about that one. So tonight, the first thing we're going to talk about is we've got a full moon approaching. It's going to hit us here on the West Coast at 8:09 p.m. tomorrow night. Right, Jeff?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and you said that
and this is a really powerful,
really powerful one. How so?
Well, first off, we have Mars has been retrograde. It's been retrograde ever since the latter part of October, and it's now going to the opposition of the sun, which is very powerful because the moon's also going to the opposition of sun. That is a full moon. I mean, a full moon is when the sun and the moon are opposed, right? So it's at full light. But this particular full moon, which is happening tomorrow, exceedingly powerful. Why? Conjuncting Mars as Mars is retrograde, opposing the sun while the moon is full. This is powerful. You know, lunations are always considered as the new moon and the full moon. So this is really powerful. You want to watch where that's happening in your chart, like what houses it is, because this one's going to pack some punch. I can tell you that. It's very, very powerful.
That full moon is going to be in my, you and I are normally 3 houses apart when we look at this, right? So
yeah.
Do you know offhand where the moon's going to be in your chart?
Well, I can tell you, it's going to be actually in my right in my 11th house cusp. It's going to be very close in your close to your second house, deep in your first. It's deep in your first. So right. It's powerful. It really packs some punch. Everybody can look at this. You can jump online and look at it. But Mars is retrograde right now, and this is exceedingly powerful when the outer planets, which really start from Mars out, you see, the inner planets are always going to be the moon, Mercury, and Venus. And of course, the sun is considered to be the inner ones. So Mars is the first outer planet, and it really has a lot of power when it's retrograde. It only goes retrograde once every couple of years. And this is doing so in a very, very powerful placement. I can tell you that. Very, very powerful. Even in the Vedic nakshatras, it's quite powerful. You know, this is going to definitely pack some punch here. It's going to be actually in 24 degrees back. It'll be in Taurus in the Vedic astrology, but very, very powerful. Again, this will be in a lunar mansion called Kritika. And, the moon is exalted, so it's going to have a lot of power as it conjuncts Mars. So
wow, well, I can feel it. I can feel the full moon already, for sure. Yeah,
you bet you can.
Also, it's pretty bright tonight.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. It's pretty bright tonight.
I think it's adding to the emotions right now. We're seeing, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is what's been going on with this whole situation. With you've got Elon Musk, and remember, we did a podcast talking about Elon Musk. I mean, he's going to be in the news for a long time. And of course, Elon said, he's worried about getting, assassinated. He said, or he actually said that. He said, this could be a time I could really easily get assassinated. My take is he's certainly in danger, but it doesn't look like he's going to get assassinated. And let's hope that's right. But the chart doesn't bode that well. It does bode that he's going to get attacked a lot. And I think, a lot of people always like to use these terms, the deep state and the swamp and, the left and the right and all that. That to me is the circus going on down in front of the crowd, but it's the owners at the top of the pyramid who keep shoveling the money into the furnace for all this to happen. And yes, it's happening, but I would really say that anyone who gets in the way of the machine of the agenda, and Elon Musk might be just kind of doing that right now. So this is a powerful time for him. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I've heard already there's lawsuits coming his way, and they're attacking different companies. What's nice about Elon and people like Trump is they got enough money to throw at it to keep the wolves pushed back and keep the alligators at least on the other side of the moat of the castle, right?
Yeah.
And because they both have castles. And the bottom line is, Elon is doing something that's pretty profound right now by releasing all this, and he's caused this firestorm of response that's happening with this whole issue bringing up all the suppression of free speech. And this goes along exactly what you and I were talking about, Ella, on previous podcasts, and that is, as I said, 2020 forward. Yeah, we know it was COVID. Yeah, we know all the stuff went on with the politics and everything. But what's really happened is just like we saw in 9/11, just like we saw in 2008 and 9 when the banks crashed, the effects of these major events carry on for years. And this last one, which brought us in COVID, is an aspect of fascism, global fascism. And we're seeing it on every level. We're going to get to down the line. We can't do it in this podcast, but remember, we had someone ask, why did Australia get so suppressed?
Yes.
And we're going to look at that. But I would say it's happening globally. I mean, when you look at, we only know what the news tells us, right? But I have a blessing. I get to talk to people in different areas of the world almost every week, several times. I've got clients all over the globe. And it's really interesting to hear what I hear. And one of the things I'm hearing quite a bit from people in Europe and in Australia and New Zealand is how high the food prices are, how high the fuel prices are. I thought we were high here. I was looking at our gas bill the other day. Camille says to me, Jeff, our gas bill has doubled. And I was mentioning that to a person in Europe. He says, our gas bill is up 4 times higher than it was last year, 4 times.
Wow.
So we got it tough here in America, and we're certainly seeing a lot of crazy stuff. I know the shelves are really sporadic right now. In fact, I just did a session with a manager of a big grocery store chain. I think it was the day before yesterday. And he was telling me, he says, we get really sporadic changes in our delivery. Sometimes we can't get certain products. Like I think it was you just telling me yesterday, you couldn't find tissue paper.
No, I couldn't find tissues, box tissues.
Right.
Couldn't find them. And then one store that I did find them in, a box of tissues that was.
You need one. I got one right here. So. But I still got a few left.
Well, only use them when you absolutely need to then. But
right.
A box of tissues that was costing.
Don't sneeze. That's right.
It was costing $1.49. I would say a year ago or even 8 months ago, and now it's $5. So pretty wild.
$5. Yeah.
Pretty.
That's way over double. That's like almost 2.5 times. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine who owns restaurants, and he was saying, my God, he can't believe the prices for vegetables and everything. It's just skyrocketed.
Well, sure. When you increase fuel like this, you're going to exponentially raise all costs in every corner of the economy. And even though the astrology doesn't show globally like a huge crash in economics, it just shows a deepening recession. And I think it's being caused by the people at the top of the pyramid. They want to keep us in extended perpetual debt that rises. And if they can create a situation where there's great shortages, people will do anything to get, to keep safe, to keep warm, to keep fed, and this is the game that they're playing. This is really, like I've been saying, fascism. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which brought us COVID and all the other crazy stuff, is an aspect of fascism. And, another thing we're seeing that couples with that, and you and I were talking about that earlier, is there is a direct attempt to literally destroy the moral fabric of society. This is what Saturn-Pluto conjunctions do. They're very, very, dangerous. We're seeing this in every area of society, particularly from literally the grade schools, the
Yeah.
preschools, the high schools, and college programming stations, I call them now.
Mhm.
And it's tough. It's really going to have a long-term effect, and we've really got to stand up, I think, for freedom and freedom of speech and all that. And again, whether you like or hate Elon Musk, I think he's doing something pretty profound right now by exposing at least what is going on. And
Yeah.
He's getting a lot of heat for it too.
Well, that's huge. I mean, it's huge. And I wonder how long he'll be able to do that. It's interesting. That's why he was saying that about his own life. And I'm glad the chart shows that that isn't going to happen
Yeah,
because,
it leans like it won't. Yeah.
yeah,
I think
but
they'll tackle them the new way. The new way now is the legal system, right? Just throw a bunch of high-powered attorneys and just wear them down. He's got the wherewithal to fight that, and
he
that's
sure
the
does.
key. I mean, the American legal system is the finest system money can buy,
Yeah.
and it truly is. And if you can put the right legal teams up, you can stave things off for a long, long time. You can even buy innocence. We've seen that happen before
Oh
many
gosh.
times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and there's the legal system, but then there's also what's going on behind the scenes, right? That nobody knows about,
Yep.
threats and all kinds
Yep.
of things. So,
You bet.
but yeah, what he's doing right now is tremendous. It really is pretty tremendous.
It is. And it's really another thing that's exacerbating, like this full moon we were talking about. This is the kind of tension. See, it's very subtle, but very powerful what these moons do. The new moon and the full moon was always looked at by the ancients in juxtaposition up against the Great Revolution charts. So this is really a powerful time right now. And I don't think you need astrology to tell you, you can just feel it. The media is going crazy right now after all this release, because it's literally exposing the entire industrial military complex behind the scenes, which again, I believe is funded by the owners at the top of the pyramid. They're just stirring the pot. And they really want to get in to, I think, destroying if you look at, here's a good example. We were talking about this. If you watch some of the old movies, like particularly the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, particularly the 30s and 40s, there was this bravado human spirit. People dressed really nice. They were very fastidious. You had honor. It was really to be respected, to be intelligent, have a good vocabulary. Now we're noticing, ever since the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and you were mentioning it, where you see all the advertisements, you see this basically verklempt look from everyone. They want you downtrodden, like all the young people. Instead of having zest and fervor for life, we're seeing a dumbing down, or you could say an unhappiness to everyone.
That's what it feels like to me when I see a lot of these ads. And of course, we were touching on the whole Balenciaga thing. That's how our conversation started, because I brought that up.
Yep.
And you look at the children that they used in those ads, and just look at the expression. It's expressionless, right? And that's what they want.
Expressionless, right?
That's what they want to promote. And it's not only that ad. I walk around and I see, look at so many ads. It's expressionless. Exactly right. And then that's what wants to be, that's what's getting promoted, instead of, like you were saying, zest for life, feeling blessed to be alive, feeling blessed.
You bet. And, people were really enthusiastic to be strong, to be, smart and be achieving. There was this human spirit in almost every area of life that, it was really great to be human and great to be, skilled at whatever it is you did and whatever your field of endeavor. And now they don't want that. They just want obedient slaves, So this is an attack, not just on, you could say, any particular race or creed. It's an attack on the humanism. It really is. And we're seeing this too. When you look at the G20 and you listen to people like, Klaus Schwab and who's the other one, Soros and many others, it is an underlying tone that they just want to get rid of people and replace us all with subservient AI or people who are subservient. They don't want
Right.
thinkers, they want obedient, conforming slaves.
Right.
And I think we have to fight back insofar as that we instill pride into people, and we really have, I think, faith in humanity's intelligence, because it's incredible. AI will never compare to a human being because it'll never have free will. It only does what it's programmed to do.
Yeah.
And I talk about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
The third eye chakra is where we are believed to integrate the consciousness in the lower conscious mind. And this is something I love to always talk about. I'm going to share the screen on this one because, you and I have had this discussion many times, and that is, there's a wonderful book, and I always love to mention it. It's referred to as the Shaar Haguilgulim. And the Shaar Haguilgulim is a strange text that means the gates of reincarnation. And I've got it right where? Here. And people might be interested in scoring that book. Shaar means gate, and Haguilgulim means cycling of the souls. And in this book, it's got a breakdown of my favorite diagram. If you look at, it's called the nefesh. Now, modern psychology, or we might refer to it as the lower conscious mind, right? And this big thick dashed line is the so-called subconscious mind. But a much better and more detailed breakdown is the 5 parts of the soul. And this is actually spoken about in the ancient Vedantic literature, where they actually talk about the 5 parts of the aura or breakdowns of the soul. And this is where astrology works through, and you could say disease and everything else may come through this when we get breaks in the auric field. Well, why am I going into all this? Is because it really relates to what we're seeing in the world right now. It's been long known, if you suppress people with force, they will always choose, or move away from pain. They will always choose pleasure over pain. So when you cause pain, people will stay away from that. And see, the lower conscious mind is like silly putty. It really retains what it's been imprinted upon. In fact, this has been called etheric energy or conscious energy. And it's just like schools. If you tell somebody enough something, it doesn't even have to be true. It just has to be acquiesced to. And of course, we call that belief, right? So what I love about this diagram is the lower conscious mind is believed to be forming actually in the womb. It's not us. It's the interface between what modern psychology might call the lower conscious mind to this miraculous body, and it's believed to go through the third eye chakra. See, that's also the Jupiter chakra. So why I'm saying all this is we see these ebbs and flows throughout time, and we see the suppression of the human spirit that comes in, and it's really, what force would be causing this? I can tell you, in my opinion, I believe it is the demonic forces. The demonic forces have been on this planet since the beginning of time. In fact, I really believe that the story in the Bible, the Garden of Eden story, and as well as many cultures talk about this, the Bhagavad Gita, the Hebrew texts, etc., all have a story of a war in heaven and the spirits were cast down. And I've mentioned this, that I believe these guys are really literally at the atomic level of creation, and probably even deeper than that. Everything has juxtaposing forces. You take atoms, you have electrons and protons. Everything is balanced day and night. You see, you always have opposing forces. So these guys seem to be involved in that, and they appear to be held here in abeyance. Usually we get a guy with a suit tie and a microphone telling us about the devil, right? But it's just a little bit deeper than that. These guys are really at the core elements of a lot of demonic stuff that goes on this planet. And we hear about the child trafficking, we hear about the sex trafficking, we hear about all this really crazy stuff. And people always go, well, that's all conspiracy theories, right? Well, I'm not so sure about that one. There's a little bit more detail to that. And I guess what I'm driving at here is we're going to see this kind of crescendo between now and like 2028, where this stuff's really going to, again, swing the pendulum, and then it's going to start returning back again. So, these forces never, ever stop, but the good always wins. And the good always wins because the divine is above the demonic spirits. That's actually why they're held here. So it's very mysterious, all this stuff. And some wonderful things are talked about in that text, the Shaar Haguilgulim, as well as many other ancient texts in Egypt and in ancient Vedanta too. The Upanishads are amazing, and the Puranas. They talk about all this waves of souls coming in here. I always love to talk about this stuff because it really, I think, is at the core elements of what is driving all this stuff. It's really, really pretty wild.
Yeah, really, really wild. Well, I just feel like it's so important to pay attention to what we buy into, right? Each one of us, what we choose to buy into, that there's the free will, right? I still struggle with that, truly understanding the free will the more I learn about astrology. But it's what are we each buying into?
We're hitting it right on the head there. What are we buying into? When, again, that whole word belief, if you pick it apart, it's really interesting. It's being into, leaving your critical thinking. So you always have to, there's nothing wrong with faith at all,
right.
and what your own beliefs are, but it's always wise before we just buy something hook, line, and sinker, because people will fight to the death over it. I mean, I've seen it. We're seeing it right now. This country is so polarized, which brings me right back to the astrology. Remember, I said the United States in January has two major things happening. First off, it has the Saturn's 28-year cycle of Sadi Sate, which is the transit of Saturn over the moon on the United States, starts January 17th. Secondly, we have this, and I pray for this one, the really good Jupiter Nadi progression. That is a 12-year cycle that kicks in on the United States. I personally think a lot of stuff that Elon Musk is mentioning and bringing out is going to really stir the pot here. We're going to see quite possibly the Supreme Court get involved in some of this stuff ultimately down the line. This is a real kind of clash of the titans here coming up. And as I've been saying, we have Neptune squaring Mars on the United States of America. It hasn't happened since the Civil War. So the polarization and the manipulation behind the scenes to cause this polarization is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And then we have the Pluto return. And mind you, the last time that happened to Rome, was it divided the country the first time, at the first 250 years. The second time it destroyed it. Rome broke up. The Roman Empire was destroyed. So if you go back and look at great empires, they always tend to go through great convulsions and changes, or sometimes dissolve right around 250 years approximately. And that's because of the Pluto returns on the entity. It's very destructive. And that's what the United States is in right now.
Yeah. Well, everything goes through challenges, right? Every being, everything goes. It seems like life is a never-ending cycle of challenges, one after the other, one after the other. It does,
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's the place of ego. I'm glad you brought that up. It's the place of ego. And it truly, truly is. When, all the great thinkers, I mean, you and I really like Krishnamurti and Paramahansa Yogananda, and of course, Deepak Chopra, and so many others that are great thinkers, and all great thinkers throughout time have always focused on one element: ego. And it's very mysterious. I'll go back to a share here, because that diagram, again, I want to bring up, is so valuable. And that is the one that I was talking about, because not only is this big, thick dashed line here, the demarcation between what psychology or psychiatry might call the conscious mind below here, and this up above, the so-called subconscious mind. But it's also the blockage, and that's critical. It's the blockage between our knowing our past lives, our knowing who we really are as spiritual beings having a physical experience. And remember, I had mentioned there's a little thing that we all have right up above our lip. It's called Cupid's bow. And they say the guardian angel actually makes that mark right when we draw first breath. So this is really interesting stuff because we're blocked from being fully aware of who we are. Everybody runs around with their own lower egos. We all, literally, a lot of people have a chip on their shoulders. This is my space, my stuff, my things. Get out of my stuff. So you see it on the road. So the more we become aware of whatever we got, we are not taking with us. And I find that a lot of people get really concretized in their sense of self and senses of belongings. And sometimes hardship is what really makes that consciousness expand, because you realize when somebody passes away, nobody takes anything with them. Period. You don't take nothing with you. You don't even get your shirt. You don't get, anything. You're you get what you came in with. Your karma. And that us Westerners always kind of freak out, when I use the word karma. I remember when I first started studying Vedic astrology, the word karma, in the West, you go, God, it's got to be bad, right? Can't be karma unless it's bad, right? Well, that's not true. Karma can also be really good.
Absolutely.
And I really believe that's what astrology is that we get the charts we get because of our, you could say, merits of the soul. That's another way of saying the word karma, the merits of the soul. And the religions like to make astrology, it's the work of the devil. No, it's not. I think it's the work of angels that are literally incarnating us commensurate with the merits and demerits of the soul.
Yeah.
And look at Nadi astrology. Its principle is we are born. That's the purpose of our incarnation is Saturn. And look at Saturn. It's the cross over the crescent of the moon. It's previously concretized energies that are rooting out into your life. Well, notice Pluto here, even though I know a lot of people demean Pluto from being a planet, Pluto seems to have raw generational power. And what I have found, and I've discussed this with many other astrologers in the past, when Saturn and Pluto join, which is what happened in 2020, it literally destroys the foundations, or tries to, of society globally. And that's exactly what happened. COVID was really a dramatic situation for everyone on this planet, everyone. I mean, I think it's safe to say our lives have changed since then. And I think it was so dramatic because of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which has not happened like that since the last 240 years. The last time it was happened, George Washington and his revolutionaries were busy freeing this country. The last time, that was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
So now we're in a high-tech revolution that's way beyond anything we're going to imagine. I think in 50 years from now,
we won't recognize this place.
We won't recognize it in 20.
Well, we won't recognize it because we won't be here, but we will definitely in 50 years. But we might come back and, in a different form, and we might be here and experience it. Who knows? Who knows? But so fascinating how it's all right there in the astrology.
Sure is. And another thing astrologers really, no one is 100% sure of, is the precession of the equinoxes, like where the solar system is going through the sidereal, you could say, fixed stars. And there's all kinds of theories that we're entering the dark rift. I've been hearing that for a while. The dark rift is this zone in the Milky Way that is very, very profound. And it has a huge effect on consciousness, huge effect. So, again, these are mysteries that I think really only the angels know. But there's clearly, if it's true that we go around that central sun about every 25,700 and something odd years, and I know the flat earthers don't believe that, but it's still a celestial model, folks. And no matter how you slice this for thousands of years, this has been in the ancient texts. And boy, I'll tell you what, it sure adds up when you cast charts every day and you look at, a soul having an experience. It's stunning how accurate these fixed stars are.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning.
It really is.
It's stunning how accurate all of it is. Yeah. So we are going to look at a question now, right?
Oh, okay, good. Sure.
And we've been having a few questions, and this one came in a little while ago, so I definitely wanted us to look at it tonight. And we have
Right.
someone who's asking about Kanye West's chart,
Ah,
wondering about his chart, wondering what's going on in his life. Obviously, he's doing what he's doing, and he's definitely out there, and most people know about him.
right.
So yeah, I know I gave you his
Yeah, you gave
birth
me his birth time.
information.
I'm going to look at this. Yeah, I'm going to look at it a couple of ways here. Um, the first one I will say is just looking at an interrogation chart. I don't have it on the screen. I'm just looking at it right now. I would say that this is a pretty tough time for him. It's not only, we know that. I mean, my God, he just lost $1 billion contract. He's in
Right.
all this controversy. He's, definitely really irritated a lot of people with things that he said.
Right.
That is probably not a real good idea to say. I'm not here to judge, but anytime you attack any
Oh,
ethnicity, I think it's
why would
not a
you?
good thing to do,
No,
especially since, I don't think we can ever condemn any ethnic race. I think that's really not a great way to go, only because, people are people and there's great people in every race and there's people that are jerks in every race. I mean, let's face it,
absolutely.
it's
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 not
the way the
about
world is.
race.
Not about race. Yeah.
It's
Thank
not
you.
about race.
Exactly right on. So, I could tell you, you did give me Kanye's birth chart, and I looked at it. Kanye West right now is finishing a 17-year Mercury period. And Kanye West himself, I don't care what time he's born, he's in Sari Sate. And it's interesting because his troubles all kind of started in the last year and a half. Look at the divorces, the last couple of years, his
Yeah.
divorce, all the dissension. So he's got Saturn transiting his moon. Well, that's known as the famous Sati Sate in Vedic astrology, which again is a strange word for anyone listening. That means it's a 7.5-year period, which all of us will go through at least 2 times in a life, because it happens about once every 28 and a half years from where Saturn is in juxtaposition to your moon sign. So most people can live to have 3, but you're going to be pretty old. You're going to be anywhere from late 70s to mid 80s, and even possibly as old as 90 if your chart was
Right.
set up the right way. But most folks will get 2. So this is Kanye West's second one. Let me just make sure to that. And this is a tough time, and it's likely to get a little bit tougher for him. Yeah, this is his second one. His first one was in the early 90s. It's interesting. You and I were talking. The Nadi astrology shows that Kanye's father, which you said he was a member of the Black Panthers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, very interesting. Because here, let me put that on the screen, because that's kind of an interesting look here. You can see this inner box here is Kanye West's birth chart. And you could see the sun is indicative of the father always. And notice this with Mercury and Jupiter. And I said right off the bat, his dad couldn't have, he had to be a pretty smart guy. Why? Because the sun is with Mercury and Jupiter. And moreover, you said he was a journalist and that he had actually gone into homeless camps to like research it and see if he could help people.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, his dad had to be actually an interesting guy. It was very smart, is what it showed. And his mother was a professor. And,
Right.
when we looked at that,
Also,
his
just
mother's
one
now,
other thing. Sorry to interrupt. One other thing
yeah,
about the father wasn't around, right?
right.
You could see that because the parents were
Yep,
divorced and he was
that's
with the
right.
mother. You could see in the chart that the father wouldn't be around much, like in the home.
Right, because the father's in the 12th house.
Right.
See, that was the first
Always
thing I
like
said
that.
when I read your chart. I said, "I bet your
Right.
dad wasn't around." You said, "Yep, he left when I was 3."
Right. Right. Right.
Same thing
Never
with
around.
Kanye. His dad would not have been around. Why? The son, indicative of the father, is in his 12th house, which means he went distant from him. And you said his mother was a professor. And notice the mother very well placed here in a fixed sign in the 9th house. And that is definitely one of higher education and knowledge. So his
Mm.
mother was a professor at the University of Chicago.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Right. Well, what gives him his edge in his chart? What, because obviously he's a very different personality, very,
I'm,
very
I'm,
different.
I'm so glad you asked that. 2 things. One is he's got K2 in the 10th house. Now, for anybody listening, K2 is the moon's south node. See, remember, when we get eclipses, the north node is known as the head of the dragon, right? Or Rahu. And the south node is K2, the tail of the dragon. So he's got K2 in his 10th house of career, which means he'd be all over the place. And the guy is very spiritual, no matter what, you believe about his opinions or what have you. The Lord of the Ascendant's in the 12th conjunct Jupiter, which in plain English means a person would pursue a spiritual path.
Right.
What's tough for Kanye, and he's ending a Mercury dasha. He's ending a Mercury dasha. He's been in that since 2008. The bottom line is, in 2025, actually the end of 2025, he enters into a 7-year period of K2, which is the tail of the dragon. So I would really expect a lot of change. Mm-hmm. This is not an easy time for him right now, because in January, Saturn goes over his moon, which is the full transit of what they call the Sati, or the Saturn over the moon. So it's a tough time for him. Mm-hmm. This next couple of years, I would say, not an easy road for him at all. So he's again, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but I would say, he's going to find a lot of changes.
Well, we have lots coming up. I think podcast before last, you had said we had a big announcement coming up that I think we might be able to share next time.
Yeah,
I think so. So stay tuned for that. Please, everyone, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for your comments. Keep your questions coming. Have a beautiful holiday season, and we will see you next time, won't we, Jeff?
Sounds good. You bet. Thanks for listening.